For day 2 of our review, we're going to look at multiplying some polynomials and we're going to look at some beginning factoring. Factoring in itself can take on a whole week of lessons. So we're just going to kind of touch on it. And then in day 3, we'll continue on with some more factoring, okay? So in the first part of this, we're just going to kind of look at multiplying. So just to kind of quickly review, when you have one term, so when you just have one item, whether it's an x, or whether you have 3x squared. This is called a monomial. When you have two terms, so when you have like x plus 5, or when you have maybe x squared minus 7x, this is called a binomial because there's two terms. When you have three terms, we call that a trinomial. So let's say we have x squared plus 4x minus 6. This is called a trinomial because there's three terms, okay? So if you kind of look at the first row here, you're going to notice we have a monomial times a binomial. We have a monomial times a trinomial. A monomial times a binomial again. But basically what I want you to notice is this piece out front here, it's only one term. It's just a monomial. When we get to the second and third row, you're going to see there's two parentheses. So those are two binomials, okay? So basically, I just want you to pay attention to what we're working with. So in number 1, really the whole first row, it's really just the distributive property. You're just going to multiply x times x, so you get x squared, and then you're going to multiply x times 3, and so you get 3x. And then you're done. That's all you have to do, okay? So multiplication is really just the distributive property. So we're going to kind of look at the distributive property with our multiplication. But when we go to factor, we're basically working in reverse. In factoring, they give you this. This is what you'll start with, and you'll end with this piece. So really, the two titles up here are just the opposite of each other. It's kind of like, are you given this first and then answer, or answer and then, or first and then answer? It's just kind of depending on which way you're going, okay? So let's look at number 2. You're going to go x squared times x squared, so that would be x to the 4th. Remember, when it's a double base, you add. X squared times 2x, so that would be plus 2x cubed. Remember, there is a 1 sitting out front here, so it's really 1 times 2. Okay, then x squared times a negative 5, so that would be a minus 5x squared, and that would be your answer. So why don't you quickly pause it and try number 3. All right, hopefully you tried it. So we're just going to distribute. So 2 times 4 would be 8. And then y times y squared, remember, we add the exponents. And then we distribute again. So 2 times negative 9. And then really the y just kind of tags along. All right, in this next row, we are still distributing. But oftentimes when you have two binomials, they will call this FOIL. So if you remember FOIL, it stands for first, outer, inner, last, which I'll be honest with you, it is the distributive property, okay? So watch. First, b times b, outer, so the outer of each parentheses, and then we're going to do the inner of each parenthesis, so 4 times b, and then we're going to do the last of each parentheses, 4 times negative 3. That's basically the distributive property. What you did was you took b times both, and then you took 4 times both. So you just did the distributive property twice. Now, when you do FOILing, the middle two terms will combine because they have the same variable. So we just have to put our middle two terms together. So a minus 3 and a plus 4 is really just a 1b, and then the minus 12 drops down. So then this would be your final answer, okay? And again, when you factor, so when you're factoring, this is what you'll start with, and then this is the ending answer. So really, these are, again, the opposite of each other. So why don't you pause the video here and really, why don't you practice up through 12 and just kind of let's see how you do. All right, so hopefully you practice them. I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can. You can always pause the video at any point, and you can always rewind the video if you need to. So first, outer, inner, last. So my answer is x squared plus 3x minus 10. All right, first, 2x squared, outer, inner, last. So again, I'm putting my middle two terms together, and then my first and my last are kind of just dropping down. All right, first, 3r squared, outer, 9r, inner, 2r, and last. Remember, you're multiplying on that, and then you want to just combine your two middle terms. And some people will say, do the middle terms always combine? I don't like the word always, because no, if they give you some really hard, crazy, weird first step, no. But majority of the time, yes. There's most of the time the middle two will. Like, let's say 95% of the time, yes. But there are a few examples where they won't. Okay, 8. We've got first, outer, inner, last. Ooh, look at that. Do you notice those drop? So these cancel, and we're just left with the first and the last. This is a very unique style problem that is really important for you guys when you get to Algebra 2. And this is called the difference of two squares. Because basically what you have here is you have alternating signs, which is going to make your middle drop. And then what you also have is the second or the last number here is the same in both parentheses. Because it's exactly the same, you're going to end up with like a negative and a positive. They're going to cancel each other. And then when you multiply times yourself, this becomes a perfect square, which is part of what we did in yesterday's lesson, okay? So if you look at number 9, if you notice, one is negative and one is plus. It doesn't matter which one comes first, the plus or the minus. It doesn't matter as long as they alternate. And as long as your second number is exactly the same, you only have to do, when you FOIL, you only have to do the first and the last. So if you do the first and if you do the last, that would be your number. And do you see this is perfect? Because 6 times 6. Now, if you're not sure, just work it out. So x times x, outer, that'd be a positive 6x. Inner would be a negative 6x. Do you see how they drop right there? And then a negative 6 times a positive 6 would be a negative 36. All right, number 10. If you are now catching on, kind of see if you can do the trick. Because notice they alternate signs and the number's the same. So we just have to do first and we just do last. And again, notice this is a perfect number. So same thing here, alternating signs. First and then last. I put a few of these on here because I really wanted you to get quite a bit of practice with these, because I'm friends with Clausen and she was saying how this is a really important concept for you guys with Algebra 2A. So I just really wanted to make sure that we practiced enough of these. Now number 12 is actually the same, only do you see how I put the coefficient in front of the x? So we still have alternating signs, plus, minus. We still have the same last number and we still have the same first number. So we can still just do first. Now we go 2 times 2 and then x times x. Isn't that a perfect number? So it still works. And then we just do last, a positive 1 times a negative 1, which would be a minus 1. Now, had it looked like this, let me just show you. 2x plus 1, and let's say over here, let's say it said x minus 1. That's not going to work. I do like the plus and in the minus, and I do like that these symbols are the same, or the numbers are the same. But what I don't like is that these two are not the same. If you were to see a problem like this, you would just have to work it out. So you would do first, you would do outer, you would do inner, and you would do last. And then notice your middle terms will not cancel. So you just get 2x minus 1. So it has to be exactly the same in the parentheses. It's just the signs need to alternate, okay? All right, moving on, number 13. This is another unique one and a very common mistake that I often see, so don't do this, is kids will try to distribute the square. So they'll try to say x squared minus 36, or some kids will say plus 36 because a negative times a negative is a positive. Either way, you're missing something. So what you have to remember is the square is really telling you to repeat the parentheses twice, like this. So when you see x squared, that's really telling you x times x. That's really what it means. Or when you say 5 squared, yes, you know it's 25, but it's really 5 times 5. Okay, so you have to repeat these parentheses twice. Now, this is similar to the problems above, where they're almost the exact same, but do you see how your symbols are not alternating? So let's work this out. First, outer, inner, last. Now, look at your middle terms. They're not opposite of each other, but they're exactly the same. So we're going to do x squared, and then we put them together, and then plus 36. So you're going to notice in this style that the middle terms don't cancel, but they actually double. So if you want to try a shortcut, I'll show you the shortcut on this one, but if you're not sure, then you just want to write it out like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to square the first. We're going to multiply these together, so that's 8 times y, and then we're going to double it. And then we're going to square the last. And that would be our answer, okay? So why don't you pause it quickly and try 15. You can either rewrite it all the way out like this, so you can go 2x plus 1 times 2x plus 1, or you can see if you can try the shortcut. All right, hopefully you paused it. If you didn't, quick pause it. Here we go. I'm going to try the shortcut. So I'm going to distribute. So I have to do 2x squared. So it looks like this, 2x squared. So that's 2 squared, x squared. I'm going to multiply these together. So I'm going to go 2x times 1, which is just 2x, but then I have to double it. And then I'm going to square the last, 1 squared. And that would be my answer, okay? So sometimes if you can kind of pick up on these little shortcuts, it makes it go a little bit faster. It's not a big deal if you don't. You're just going to have to rewrite them out and kind of just see what happens and FOIL it out. Okay, we got a couple problems on the next page. So in this next page, notice they're giving you the answer. So they're giving you the trinomial, really, that we just FOILed. So they're going to go in reverse now. So they're giving you the trinomial. You have to give them the 2 parentheses, okay? So when we look at number 16, we know it's going to be created from 2 parentheses. So then what we have to do is figure out what multiplied to get that. So the first thing you do is you look at this variable, and since it's c squared, it's going to be c times c. Now, if this was not a square, I'd have to do something different. But in today's lesson, if you notice, the first term is always a square. Now, yes, the first term might not be a square, but not in today's lesson. That's for a different day. This next step you do is you look at the last number and you ask yourself, what are the multiple combinations of this number? Now, the number on this one happens to be prime. So there's only one combination, and that's 7 times 1. But if you look at number 17, or if you look at number 18, the last number has a couple different combinations, so we might have to try a few things, okay? But we know 7 is 7 times 1. Now, if you want to reverse it and put the 1 here, it really doesn't make a difference, okay? In Algebra B, we also talked about our symbols. If your last symbol is a plus, that means the symbol inside the parentheses will be the same. Okay, so I'm going to write that at the top. Last symbol, that's why M. The last symbol is a plus, they will be the same. If the last symbol is a subtraction sign, you'll have one of each. And I apologize, I don't know if you can hear any of that. They're starting the construction on the roof of this building. So anyone who is watching this video at home, be thankful you're not here because it sounds like a war zone in our classroom. And yesterday we thought they were going to come through the roof. So yeah, be thankful of that. Okay, so if this is a plus, we know they're going to be the same. And so when we look back, they're both plus signs. Now, you might want to check. I'm not saying you have to. I mean, I'm the teacher. I know this is right. But if you want to refoil this out, if you go C times C, if you do your outer, if you do your inner, and if you do your last, notice there's your 8C that you needed. Okay? Let's actually jump to 18 because this one's a little easier. This one has a ton of options for multiplication. So let's go to this one and then we'll jump back. So when I think about 8, I have 1 times 8 and I have 4 times 2. So I clearly only have 2 choices. So let me put my parentheses down. This is a D squared, so I know it's D times D. This is a plus symbol, and so I know they're going to be the same. And when I look over here, they're both plus symbols, so I know this much is right. Now, thankfully, I'm using a pencil, so if I make a mistake, I can always erase it. So let's start with the first combination. If I were to put a 1 and an 8 right here, when you do your outer, you're going to get an 8D, and when you do your inner, you're going to get a 1D. Is that going to give you a 6? And the answer is no. So we know this is not the combination to use. So then we want to use the combination of the 4 and 2. Now, if you were here with me in class, I would be asking you, where do you want the 4 and the 2 to go? It honestly makes no difference. I can put the 2 here or I could put the 4 here. It really doesn't matter. So I'm going to put the 2 and the 4. When I do my multiplication, this is a 4D and this is a 2D, so notice I have the 6. So then this is your answer. This is your answer. This is just to like check to see if you did it correctly, okay? Why don't you do number 17, but pause it or come back together before we do 19? Okay, 17 is a little harder because of the 64. Oh my gosh, I hope you heard that. It sounds like they're coming through the roof. It is ridiculous. Anyways, 64. This is obviously 1 times 64, and then 4 goes in there, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you notice this is perfect, try 8 times 8. Whenever you have a perfect number at the end, I would suggest trying that combination, okay? Because they're trying to get you to recognize those perfect numbers because squares are really common, so try to use your perfect numbers. All right, A squared is A times A. Again, this is a plus symbol, so when we look backwards, we know it's a positive. And if you're wondering, when is it going to be a subtraction? Look at number 19. Do you see how this is a plus? But when we look back, do you see how it's a subtraction? So now that's going to be the subtractions, okay? So let's just try 8 times 8. And if we check the outer, that's an 8A. And if we do the inner, that's also an 8A. There's my 16. So I know I've done it correctly. Okay? All right, let's get through these last 3. Notice it's the same. The only thing is this subtraction sign. So notice how we have a subtraction plus, subtraction plus, subtraction plus. That will end our today's lesson. In tomorrow's lesson, we'll start off with some pluses still on the end, but then we'll figure out what do we do with these subtractions at the end. These ones are a little bit harder, okay? So if we look at 19, we're going to do x times x. Because this is a plus, they're going to be the same. So when we look back, they're both subtractions. And then we have to think of the multiples of 21. 1 and 21 or 3 and 7. Typically, you don't probably use the 1 and 21 combo just because this number isn't big. So let's use the 3 and the 7 combination. Now, it doesn't matter which one goes where, so if we throw those down, notice we have a negative 7x and a negative 3x, so that gives me my negative 10x, so I know I've done it right. So there's only 2 to go, and we're not doing homework in this chapter, so why don't you pause the video here and try these on your own, like they're homework, okay? But we're just working in class this week. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, hopefully you paused it on number 20. Now, do you realize they're changing letters on you? The letter really doesn't matter. So if you don't like S, because sometimes my S's can look like 5s. If you don't like an S, just put it as an X. It doesn't really matter. This is a plus symbol, so I know they're going to be the same, and they're both subtractions. 12 is a couple combinations. It's got 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. I highly doubt it's going to be the 1 and 12. Look at the 2 and 6. If I was to use 2 and 6, am I going to be able to get a 7? Because 2 plus 6 is not 7. So I doubt it's going to be that combination. But think about what 3 plus 4 is. How nice is that? So 3 and 4, and again, if I just do a quick check, that's a negative 4 and a negative 3, which makes a negative 7, which is what I wanted. So it's really good sometimes to do a little quick check to make sure you get the correct middle number. Okay, the last one, and then we're all done. We've got u, minus, minus. Now again, if you think about 10, you've got 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Let's just say you want to try 1 and 10. If you put the 1 and 10 down, notice that's a negative 10 and a negative 1. That's not going to get me to 7. So that is not the combination I want to use. So let's try the 2 and the 5. Now again, it does not matter where you put the 2 and 5. And if we're together, I'm going to ask a student, where would you like me to put it? So let's say you put the 5 first and the 2 second. Outer is going to give me a negative 2. Inner is going to give me a negative 5u. So there's my negative 7. Had we switched them, if we would have done u minus 2 and u minus 5, we would get a negative 5 first and then the negative 2 second, but that's still a negative 7. So it doesn't matter which parentheses come first, okay? So that is all for today, but remember, tomorrow we're going to take this last symbol and we're going to make it a subtraction sign, and that's going to make it a little bit harder. And then they're also tomorrow going to throw a number out in front of your variable. So they're going to put a number in front of this x squared. That's once again going to make it a little bit harder, okay? But that concludes day 2.